So today we're going to do a worksheet with Gabriella when she joins. She'll be with us shortly, and Michael. And all these sessions are recorded to support and share publicly to support others in these teachings. And if you don't know me, I'm Yinka and I run here my Voice Book Club, which is an inspirational self-development books. And this is what we've got left for the week. Children's story time tomorrow and Saturday movie night. Cardio workout that potentially may get cancelled. Saturday and Sundays cardio workout, but I'll put a message out shortly. But we've got Sundays Joe Dispenza meditation. We have our letting go meditations at 8:30 on Mondays. And we've got our letting go book club on the 5th of October. And in person, Manchester Law of Attraction teachings. And we've got a 2-day week. There's a couple of spaces left for this. Say again, sorry.
Lots of fun things going on.
And a lot of fun things. Full on. We're doing a 2-day in-person event. If anyone's interested in Stockport in the UK. Oh, and that's 28th of October for 2 days. And obviously we've got our WhatsApp groups. And as everyone knows, here at my Voice Book Club runs non-profit events. So anyone can take part regardless of financial status. Any donations will go to supporting Michael in all his teaching. So if after this session you feel inspired or want to show appreciation, you can do that by joining the donation link. We're just going to do some shoulder rolls. Loosen up our shoulders. So nice deep breath in, draw up the shoulders all the way to the ears. And exhale. Nice deep breath in. And exhale. One more time, nice deep breath in. And exhale. I'm not able to stand, but if anybody wants to stand and just give their bodies, get moving, you're welcome to stand up and move your body. I shall have to stay seated tonight. As some of you know that I'm not quite well. A lot of stuff has come up for me. I'm just going to play some music if you want to shake it out. So today we're going to go through a reality management worksheet with Gabriella, who's not quite with us yet, I don't think. But if Michael wants to come and share and introduce yourself. Oh, you're muted, Michael. You're able to unmute. Oh, there you go. You should be able to unmute. Let me make you a co-host as well. You unmute now?
There we go. We did it. It's a miracle. Yes. So welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're here. And yes, the objective is to step into doing a reality management or a forgiveness worksheet. And the essence of this process is one that recognizes that perception is unique and individual to each one of us. You know, if we just took a simple example about what's happening on each of our screens right now, My eyes may be looking at one aspect of the screen, and maybe you're looking at somebody else or something else, and the output of your mind, even though we're both looking at a computer screen, is totally and completely different. Reality, perception, is the output of the human mind. And there's a really interesting video. If you haven't watched it, you can go on to YouTube and just do a search for Anil, A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H, and a TED Talk. And you'll find Anil Seth, who is a cognitive psychologist who's explaining how the human mind works, and that it's the mind that produces the world that we see. It's the mind that puts this picture on the inside of our eyeballs, and we're not seeing what's going on outside of us. Once you recognize that's true, then you realize that cognition has a quality. Is your cognition really high, good quality? Is it poor quality? And whenever there's hostility or fear, there tends to be a poor quality projection from the mind of whatever's going on inside of someone. So recognizing that reality is the output of the mind, or perception is the output of the mind, if you know how that process is arrived at within the mind, then you can begin to address and change perception. And so forgiveness, as opposed to what our culture's taught us, that, if I'm in pain, if my cognition, if my mind, if my physiology is in pain, of course, it's your fault. I blame you, and I'll forgive you. I'll let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. But of course, if I let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me, it doesn't change what's happening inside of me. What forgiveness actually does, and it's a technology that comes from the 1st century Aramaic language, is it's a tool for collapsing perception. And when you collapse the perceptual content of your mind, what happens is you get access to the underlying dynamics of your own mind. And when you have access to the underlying dynamics, you can change them. In the ancient teachings, they said, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. Now, that word heart in our modern updated language would be the unconscious. They're not talking about the physical organ. No, the issues in your life don't come from the physical organ called your heart. They come from your unconscious mind. Doesn't come from somebody else. You'll notice that if you've been through a particular painful reality 87 different times with 42 different people, you're the one that was there every time. It's about you. It's your content that's creating your pain. And when you learn how to get past the mind's blame game, enter into the underlying dynamic, the heart or the unconscious, and you start to change content in the unconscious, then your whole reality structure starts to change. Your whole perceptual world starts to shift and change. And life just becomes a different game. So that's what we're here to look at, is how to do that process. And it looks like Gabrielle is with us.
Yes.
Hey there, young lady. Welcome. We were wondering if you were going to make it.
You can unmute, I think. Let's just check.
You are muted, Gabrielle.
Unmute. Can you unmute? Try it now.
Yeah, Gabriella, you're still muted.
Now
There
I'm
you
okay.
go.
Hi,
Now we've got you.
Thank you for waiting and reminding me. Thank you so much.
Delighted. Welcome.
Welcome, welcome. How is everybody?
We're rocking. Ready to go.
Okay. Oh, good. Same here, rocking.
So, do you want me
Inka,
to
as
start
we
this?
walk through this worksheet process, are you going to bring up the step-by-step
Yeah,
on
so
the
I'll bring
screen?
up the slides as well. So no one will need to have the sheet at hand. It will be on the slides.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Just a second, I need a pen.
Okay, you get yourself a pen.
Thank you.
And while we're waiting, does anyone have any questions? Anything on anyone's mind?
I'm just going to say I'm going to read as much as I can from the slides, but as some of you know, I've been doing a lot of internal work and doing quite a lot of work with Michael, of Mind Shifters and other work that has drew out quite a lot. So I may struggle with my speech. So I'll hand it over to Michael to read the slides if we start.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the steps in the worksheet process that you'll see is there's an assent to be willing to go through the physical, mental, and emotional symptoms of healing. One of the reasons why people avoid healing is because it's not Dr. Feelgood. You have to start to look at and deal with what's going on inside of you if you're ever going to change the content of your mind. And so when you touch into things that perhaps you've been hiding from yourself, physical, mental, and emotional symptoms can surface. And so it's not necessarily a Dr. Feelgood process. And so that's one of the things that Yinka, I think, is referring to is that she's in a healing process right now. So we're going to let her off the hook, and we're just going to take over and let it rock.
Sometimes it's not so pretty, that healing stage as well. It brings up all the yucky stuff.
That's the idea. The way through it is through it.
This is it.
So do you want to tell us? Go ahead, Yinka.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if people can unmute, but if you can't and you've got a question, just raise your hand. And then obviously Michael can then answer the question as we go through as well.
So Gabriella, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're working on, where we're going with this sheet, what's happening?
I think mostly what I'm working on is the regrets or anger, something like between that kind of emotions.
Okay. And is there a particular circumstance in your life that brings that anger up for you? Did you come to today's session with a particular situation in mind that you want to work on around the anger?
I think mainly is the anger when I don't know the answer for something, or I don't know which path to take in my life, and I get overwhelmed. I think that is it. Or when I feel alone, and then that's when is it coming, and I feel then angry, like with my family, and that's what is it. But at the moment, I can't recall any particular situation, to be honest. I think always what I'm working on is forgiving or basically kind of forgiving myself for how I feel about my father.
Okay.
And I'm kind of angry with him that he doesn't care.
Okay. All right. So then, first of all, the first caution I'm going to give you is please never, ever forgive yourself or try to forgive yourself for anything. It's one of the biggest mistakes we could make. Because if we believe the lie of the culture that forgiveness is about letting myself or someone else off the hook, then I'll go, well, you know, I have all this anger toward my father, but I'm going to forgive myself for that. And then I'll think I'm finished with it. Because, of course, I've already forgiven myself. But what I've actually done is I've pardoned myself for having anger. And pardoning is a nice thing to do. You know, it's a good thing to let yourself off the hook if you feel like maybe your anger has been appropriate or something toward dad. But if you think that letting yourself off the hook is what's going to resolve your anger, you're sadly mistaken. So our directive would be never forgive yourself, never forgive anyone for anything, but forgive continuously. So what we're going to do is we're going to move in the direction of taking a look at how you actually engage in forgiveness. And forgiveness, again, from the first century Aramaic, is a tool with which you go inside yourself. You collapse the projections of your mind. You go inside yourself and find the root of whatever in this case, your anger is. You want to find and change the energetic dynamic within yourself around that anger. So two different things. I'm going to pardon myself, great. And then I'm going to do my forgiveness work. And so this worksheet is the how-to of forgiveness. So it sounds like let's do a worksheet where dad is the subject of the worksheet. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you would, you could just bring up step 1. Can we?
Oh, just quickly to remind everyone, whatever is triggered, to remember to breathe. Notice what you're doing with the breath, because that's how we acquire a past, is we hold our breath. But notice what your breath is doing and breathe. This reality management worksheet. So premise, my essential nature, my human life, my new being is love. Hold a newborn. The goal of this internal forgiveness wake-up sheet is to empower me to remove fear or hostility and return me to the direct experience of love 24/7, 365 days.
So forgiveness is about removing the things that get in the way of us experiencing ourselves as who we are and experiencing the truth of what's going on.
So to always start off with worksheet, it's I, and then put your name, who I am, love.
So ultimately, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Well, ultimately, the rediscovery of who we are and being able to presence the truth of who we are in our own minds is the ultimate act of healing. And so many people come to conclusions or have thought disorders about themselves, actually oftentimes based in power person dynamics. And usually it's a parent. And so you may be working on a power person dynamic in this particular worksheet. And so if I can acknowledge to myself that the truth about me is love, and I start the worksheet out and I ground that, I put that in writing, I've taken a major step toward recognizing that I am not what's happening in my mind and really bringing into my own experience the truth about who I am. So you want to put your name in number 1A? I, Gabriella, who am love, am experiencing. And so identifying your emotions, you've already done that. Anger. If there was anger and sadness and fear, then we'd be saying, so now you're going to do 3 different worksheets, one on anger, one on sadness, one on fear, because each emotion indicates a different thought disorder that's behind whatever it is that you're experiencing. So simply using one emotion per worksheet allows you to start to delve into deeper parts of your own mind in regard to whatever it is that's going on in your world.
I was thinking about it right now, and I think like bitterness is more resonating rather than anger.
Bitterness, okay.
Bitterness.
So then 1B, bitterness. Go for it. And I'd suggest that you make a note. And one of the things when I'm doing worksheets, I always have a stack of about a dozen blanks. And like say in this situation, I'm going to do a worksheet on anger. And then I realize, no, what I'm really about right now is bitterness. But I still have that anger worksheet to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a blank worksheet. I'm going to go in and I'm going to fill in number 1B, anger. And then I'm going to fill in number 1C now that it's in awareness. And I'm going to fill dad's name in number 1C. So that'll be another worksheet that I'll do. And what I've found over the years is that when I do one worksheet and I've got my stack of a dozen blank sheets behind it, is I usually come up with an average of 4 or 5 additional worksheets that I need to do. So it can be a good idea to just have a stack there or a blank piece of paper to make notes on additional worksheets that you uncover.
And you may want to date each sheet as well, so you can go back and, if you ever go back and read them.
What date we got today?
28th today.
Thank you.
I actually received, and I'm just opening my phone to look at it here. I received a picture just a couple of days ago. Let me find it here. There it is. No, that's not it. A friend of ours who's been doing this work for many years introduced a friend of his to the worksheet process. Let me just find this. And his friend had picked up and started to really seriously do the forgiveness process and sent him a picture. Well, why am I not finding it? Well, I'll see if I find it. I'll show it to you. But anyway, it was a picture of a stack of worksheets this gentleman had sent him. This gentleman is a therapist, and he'd introduced him to the forgiveness process. And he had taken a picture of a stack of 700 worksheets. He'd just completed his 700th worksheet and was experiencing dramatic changes in his life. So he was pretty excited about having that stack of worksheets completed, had them all neatly stacked up, and taken a picture of them to share with the fellow who introduced him to the work. So draw your emotion. Oftentimes, the emotions that are going on for us come from a time that are pre-verbal. It's hard to put it into words. You were able to easily do that. But is there some kind of a graphic that you could do, just a simple line drawing that would indicate what that emotion might be? And there's what 700 completed worksheets look like.
That's amazing.
Take the screen off so we
Can you
can
see that? Can you see that all right?
Yeah.
I can't
You can see that pile actually of documents there.
Anyway, that was kind of a cool picture to get, that someone really picked it up and is really putting it to work. So this statement at the bottom of the little box where you're putting your emotion, in this culture, most people, just by the virtue that they're born into this Western culture, by the time they're about 4 years of age, are card-carrying members of the one world universal religion of blame. And they're very, very religious people. They religiously know that somebody's responsible for their anger, and somebody else is responsible for their sadness, and somebody else is responsible for their rage, and somebody else, and somebody else, and somebody else. This simple little thought is the cure for that error. If I'm in pain, my thinking's an error. If I'm in pain, there's an energy moving in me that is the cause of my pain. Nothing outside of me. I mean, short of somebody coming and punching you in the nose, nothing outside of you can cause your pain. So just being able to say to yourself, oh, if I'm in pain, it's my thinking that's an error. And when I breathe into that thought, I tend to start to open the part of my mind that holds that error, and that gives me an opportunity to bypass the error. And so we're breathing with you. Whenever I do the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, and there is a free version of it, which I'm sure Yinka probably already has in the links for today. I did a 3-hour version of the workshop about maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And one of the things that I start out with, and at the very top of my board, I have a phrase or a set of words on top. And the first one is denial. And in this work, we have a specific definition of denial that, when it's understood, really helps to see what's going on in our own minds. And that is that denial is the act of thinking or speaking as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me. And so, remember, I said that perception is a construct of the mind. When I have pain, that pain is a result of an energy that's moving in me. But if I think or speak as though Harry is the cause of my pain, then I'm saying to my mind, that truth, that this is something inside of me, you have to hide from me. I want to dissociate from that. And I want to build a whole false world, a whole picture that shows me that Harry's responsible for my pain, or Bill, or Mary, or whoever. So denial leads to dissociation. And whenever we dissociate from something, we then take the very pained content that we hold, that we've hidden from ourselves, and we use it to build our brain's image of whoever it is we're blaming. So once I deny and dissociate, I then take that very content and I project it into my brain's image of them. Now I have a picture in my mind that's painted on the inside of my eyeballs that this person is the cause of my pain. And that's called projection. Now, the culture as a whole generally talks about projection as taking something that's inside of us and putting it outside of us. That's not projection. That's actually externalization. Projection is I have content in my mind and I make pictures out of it. Today, I made pictures of Harry out of it. Yesterday, I made pictures of Bill. The day before, it was Mary. And 10 years before, it was somebody else. And 20 years before, it was somebody else. But having been through that particular energetic pattern 87 different times with 42 different people, I'm starting to realize I'm the only one that's there. It's my physiology that's producing this. And I might say to myself, well, yeah, but you know, he really does deserve my rage, my hate, my fear, whatever it is. And you know, you might be right. People do some pretty terrible things, and maybe they do deserve that. But when you realize that whatever in an energetic way you originate, you get the original of that. So the real question isn't, do they deserve it? The real question is, do you deserve it? So denial, as it says here, displaces my experience of myself as my essence love. And then my mind tells me that my emotions are caused by whoever it is I'm focused on. In this case, 1C would be dad, as you said earlier. And then what's the story? What's the situation that you're going to work on here with dad? And notice what's happening with your breath. Are you breathing? So you want to pick up your breath, and as you're thinking about this, what's the story that your mind is placing this bitterness on?
I think the story is that he doesn't care. He pretended I'm not existing, and that's what hurts.
Okay, so I'm going to invite you to recognize your denial there. When you say that is what hurts, what you're saying is something outside of you is causing hurt inside of you. And that's our very definition of denial. So I'm going to just invite you to put a question mark on that one. And now you're describing a conclusion that he doesn't care. I mean, did he say to you one day, I don't care, out of here? What's the situation that happened?
Well, he said some bits which weren't very pleasant. Like where he said basically, I'm his daughter, but I'm not his daughter. And I think his actions speaking louder than actually the words.
Mm-hmm. And what's happening with your breath right now?
It's like it's sometimes stopping or it's going very deep.
Okay.
And I can feel some like a tension, like that.
Yeah. Okay, so that just I want to see if I can kind of copy what you just did. Is what? I'm clenching my jaw, I'm closing my throat, I'm shutting down my chest, and I'm locking this energy that I don't want to deal with right into my body where I'm going to get to deal with it forever. What if, when that energy is moving in me, I were to simply soften, take a breath, and let myself breathe that energy out and be finished with that bitterness? What if I were to breathe that out of my structure rather than clamp down on it so I keep experiencing it? Would life be different, do you think?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. So then, once again, what's the story? You're focused on dad, and dad told me he was disowning me, or dad told me I wasn't his daughter. What's the story?
Yeah. The story is basically that, as I said, like, he doesn't really bother to create a connection between us. And
okay, so that's your perception of it. That's a story that you tell yourself that his behavior means. That would be my offering. What I'm asking for is what actually happened that causes your mind to hold that story.
that he's not contacting as long as it's the year. He's not making any effort.
Okay.
Even after several times I did the effort and I tried to actually create that connection, but it wasn't coming back to me. So it was
Okay.
one-sided.
So dad has been avoiding connection with me. Would that be it? Okay. So fill that in as my perception, my story. And observe once again your breath, what's happening with your breath. Now what we're gonna, were you saying something, Inga?
Oh, I just said, do you want me to go into 1D?
Oh, sure, go for it.
Yeah. The truth is, only my thoughts cause my emotional upset. The thoughts, separate wake-up sheet for each thought I use to cause my emotion is. So what is the thought?
So around this situation, what we're inviting you to do is to specifically identify what thought you're thinking that causes bitterness to move in you. And are you breathing?
Yeah.
Okay. So really pay attention to your breath. What's the thought you're using when you think about this whole situation with dad that really lands you in bitterness?
But he doesn't acknowledge I'm his daughter and he doesn't love me as the father loves the daughter.
Okay, let's fill that in there. Dad doesn't acknowledge me or love me as his daughter. Where do you feel that in your physiology when you speak those words?
Yeah.
Your throat. Okay. So breathe and soften. And let's move on to E. What's the punishment? Is there any punishment toward dad? What if you just, there was nothing to restrict you, you could just put it out there. What would you be doing to dad?
What I would do to them or what I'm doing to them or to him.
Okay. Either.
Ignoring that he's existing.
Ignoring, say it again.
Ignoring his existence.
Ignoring his existence. Okay. So then the very thing that you say he's doing about you is what you're doing about him, right? Ignoring his existence. So I'd put that in number 1C. And then is there a punishment towards self in this situation?
Yeah.
Breathe. Let your breath move. What's the punishment towards self? What are some of the thoughts that are moving right now? Right now, it looks from here like you're looking through your brain, sort of sorting through things. What's, in a general way, what's moving for you?
I think the punishment, what is worse to myself, not speaking my truth. And even thinking about this kind of thing, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to hold this kind of emotion towards to something that it cannot be fixed.
Okay.
So causing that pain in myself just because something is not going according to my way.
Right. Okay. I'd make some notes of that. And notice what's happening with your breath. So you've kind of laid out the whole situation. That's the idea of step one. So this is the construct of my mind, and I'm describing it from several different angles. And then we're going to go to step two and have acknowledged to myself where my willingness is. And so I'm willing, are you willing to face and process out all disease energies as you go through the physical, mental, emotional symptoms of healing? So going through those disease energies might be generational patterns. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if you're able to sit down with dad and have a conversation that you'd find that his power person, which was maybe mom and maybe dad, he felt like they ignored him. And he's passing on a generational process. And maybe that was very painful for him, maybe as painful as it is for you. And perhaps not having the tools and not having any way to work through that, it runs his life. And the idea here is that as you recognize what might be a generational pattern, perhaps you'll be the person in the family system that opens it up, has the courage to process through whatever energetic patterns are going on under the surface, those ones that when they start to move, you want to go and shut them down, that you might be the one in the family that is able to open them up and process through them and literally take the burden off of the generations of that painful experience of being rejected by your own parents. I don't know, but that might be what it is. So,
Sounds like it. Yeah.
So
And
go ahead, say that again.
I think, Michael, as you described it, and knowing also the history, when I ask about the history of my father's parents, there is something in it when I had a little bit of more understanding, but I still couldn't. I did understand my father's thought process, but I still couldn't.
Breathe.
I still couldn't actually I still couldn't overcome that.
Right. Big family issue.
Yeah.
Intergenerational communication is very often a major family issue. And who knows, maybe you're going to be the early adapter of this work that opens that up for the whole family. I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me. So what does physical, mental, emotional healing look like? Well, on a physical level, healing looks like any kind of physical symptom you've ever had. And from just your physiological expression, it wouldn't surprise me if as you open this up, there are going to be some untoward sensations in your throat and your upper chest. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And the other thing is when we start to open, let's imagine if that energy is locked here and you unlock it, it takes a lot of energy to throw that off. And the other aspect of throwing off things that maybe have been going on in the bloodline for a long time can be exhaustion. It's like, man, this starts to move and I just want to go to sleep and I want to check out. Boom, gone. So physical symptom of healing is any symptom you've ever had in low energy. On a mental level, it can look like any kind of negative thought you've ever had and confusion. And on an emotional level, it looks like any kind of negative feeling you've ever had and depression. So that's what healing looks like. When you think of this, let's go back to one of our foundation principles. Albert Einstein says this: on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy. Energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses, there is no matter. Einstein says the material world doesn't exist. What exists is an energetic world. And when I recognize that it's all energy, relative to my energy system, there are energies that strengthen me and lift me up, and there are energies that weaken me and can destroy me. One is disintegrative, the other is integrative. If I'm carrying around disintegrative energies, the throwing off, when that energy came into my structure, it reflected as symptoms. When the energy starts to move out of my structure, what do you suppose it's going to reflect as? The same symptoms. They're energetically, when you're looking at the symptoms, healing and disease look exactly the same. This is one of the problems with medicine today, is medicine looks at symptoms and says, these symptoms are bad. We need a drug to shut them down. When the truth is, no, we don't need a drug to shut them down. We need empowerment to open up so the system can throw those things off. Because if you shut down a destructive symptom and shut it down and shut it down and shut it down, you just caused deeper levels of disease and degeneration. And you'll notice that the medical profession is not very good at degenerative disease, because drugs are the cause to a great degree of degenerative disease. Every drug is a disease disguised as a cure. If you open any package, I don't care if it's just a package of aspirin, and you look at the insert, now they'll tell us these are side effects. Excuse me, they're not side effects. When you read that insert, you'll be reading the name of several different diseases. Drugs, every one of them cause disease. However, they have discovered that certain drugs can shut down certain symptoms. Like when doing this isn't enough to shut it down, if I take the right drug, phew, it goes away. Now I feel better. See, it's gone. But where did it go? Well, first of all, this was a poison. It was a toxin that caused the symptom to go away. So my body's going to have to deal with the toxin. And then there's this whole list of diseases caused by that set of toxins, though my original symptoms are gone and I feel better. You do a lifetime of that and you've got 20, 30, 40 different drugs. I remember we were doing an intensive several years ago in Florida, and there was a young man, there was a military gentleman, and we were talking about this very topic. And he got up and went to his room. It was a residential workshop we're doing. And he brought back a Walmart bag full of drugs, laid them all out. And I don't remember exactly what it was. It was 25 or 30 different drugs. Within about a month, he was down to one drug. He was able to get rid of them. So when I'm willing, and I recognize that these energies that have been locked in, maybe for generations, as they start to come out, are going to look the same way on the way out as they did on the way in. And I'm willing to embrace that. I'm willing to stay connected to love. And I'm willing to ask for support to do that. And I'm going to keep my breath moving. Those things move more quickly. So on a mental level, again, it's any kind of negative thought and confusion. On an emotional level, it's any kind of negative feeling and depression. That's what healing looks like. It's not Dr. Feel Good. That's why most people won't go for it. No, just give me a pill. Yeah, but no, it doesn't matter what the side effects are. I want the pill. I don't want to feel this. Well, sooner or later, you're going to have to deal with it. The energy's inside of you. The pill doesn't take it out of you. It just shuts down your awareness of it. So we're going for a deeper awareness, willingness to embrace. So that's 3A, now 3B.
My desire, the constructive result of the exact goal that drives my pain perception is that I want 1C, my trigger, which you'd add, to what?
So perception, remember we said it's a construct of the mind. And you'll notice, and I'm putting this out to everybody that's listening, you'll notice that unless you're just a generally miserable person, as long as everybody's fulfilling the goals you have for them, doing what you want them to do, you're a pretty happy camper. Things are pretty good. And hostility and fear generally only come up when someone violates a goal I hold for them. Why is that? What's going on here? Well, there's some Harvard research that shows that in a time frame where they can measure 10,000 units of electrical activity happening in the brain. So they've got people hooked up to electrodes, and they're measuring 10,000 units of energy firing off. In that time frame, which is about a 25th of a second, according to that research, the max amount of data that enters into perception, that we can be aware of in perception, is 9 bits. So 10,000 brain cells are firing. I get to see 9 bits of data. Now, if that research is accurate, and it's been around for better than a half a century, and it's the most quoted research in psychological history. It came out of Harvard back in the 50s and is still being seen as accurate. If that's true, then there must be some mechanism in me that tells my mind which 9 bits of data I get to see out of the 10,000 that are firing, because the majority of it's hidden from me. Something has to determine, something has to drive the process of selecting which 9 bits of data. My offering is, it's our goals. So what's in this situation? And the more exact you are with identifying the goal you hold, for, in this case, Dad, the more powerful and healing this worksheet will be. So if you look at that whole thing you described in number 1 with Dad, what is it that you want from him specifically?
I would love that he will explain to me why he is behaving as he's behaving, and why he doesn't see me that are worth his attention, and I need him as a father.
Breathe. So my offering would be, this would be a place where if I had my 12 worksheets and I were doing this, I peel and I go look at another worksheet. You just open another totally different worksheet where you want him to explain to you. You want to understand. But that's not your goal here, where Dad's disowning you. The situation is, that's not your goal here. My take would be the goal probably looks like, what I'd like Dad to do is just look at me with loving eyes. I'd like Dad to just reach out and embrace me and say, sweetie, I cherish you. Is that not closer to the goal you hold? That other one's a good worksheet. That's a goal, another worksheet you uncovered. And that'll be an important one for you to do. That will clean up another part of your mind around Dad. But at this point, the more, and there might be 10 different worksheets just in this. It might be, I'd like Dad to just gaze over at me and just give me a loving look. It might be the verbal. It might be wanting the hug. It might be the acknowledgement. You know, there might be many worksheets to be done around this. The mind stores information in files, so to speak. And each file that contains pain content will bring its pain content forward when a goal is loaded that resonates with that pain content. And so each goal that you recognize and are specific about and do forgiveness around will empower you to clean out the pain content related to that goal. And you know, certainly each of those, when I brought them forward, the smile that moved on your face, I think we're hitting pretty close to home. And each of them are related, but they're still individual goals that when you work with each one of them will give you a different healing result. So which one really resonates the strongest for you? And that's what we want to put here in 3A.
When you have mentioned about this giving me that loving look or hugging me. I didn't know how does it feel, so I couldn't even put it as a goal. But when you said it, it would be absolutely amazing if I could have this with my father.
Yeah, perfect. And that's what I put in here as the goal. That other one, again, will be a different worksheet to do. I'd make note of it. I want to understand. That'll be another good worksheet for you, but this is the one that's really up for healing now. And breathe. What's happening? I notice your hand going to your throat.
When I feel this kind of emotion, then I feel it here always.
Okay.
And it's exactly like you need to really breathe through it, like to ventilate it.
Yeah. So notice where you're pointing is exactly the core of where your shutdown was.
Yeah.
And that's where I say, I'm the one who's holding on to the disease energy here. I'm the one who's causing my disease. And what I want to do is I want to be able to open that tissue and whatever I've stored there as often as, and for many people, they tend to have a pattern. And I suspect your pattern place of putting that, and it might be a combination of, I'm not allowed to speak. That might be another goal, is that you want dad to listen to you. So that would be something that would relate to that. There are a lot of things I have to say, so just allowing that to open, to breathe into it, let that tissue open will be powerful. What you're looking to do is to process out of your structure all corrupt data. And there might be many generations of corrupt data around this issue of mother or father and daughter. Good work.
Thank you.
We'll go to the next one, Yinka.
Would you suggest to do the same worksheet on all these feelings?
Yes. Well, my take would be you'll do a similar worksheet, and there might be many feelings. There might be feelings or thoughts and feelings of loss and deprivation. There might be grief. There might be rage. There might be many of them. Right now, we're looking at the anger aspect of it, but you might end up doing 15 different worksheets where almost all of it's the same, but you're touching into different aspects of it. And ultimately, when you realize, like, let's say you've got a computer and you're into doing computer graphics, and you're going to do this really complex computer graphics scene. It involves motion and explosion and colors and lights. And there are a lot of different files in that computer that have to come together for that result of the computer graphics visual to be available. Well, in exactly the same way, in order for our mind to present to us a construct called reality, there's a lot that moves under the surface. And where there's corrupt data is where there's hostility or fear stored. Hostility and fear, most of the world think hostility or fear tells me there's somebody out there I need to be upset about. But hostility or fear is really a signal internal to us that tells us that we have corrupted data in us, and we're using that corrupted data to produce our reality. Let's use an example. Have you ever had somebody accuse you of saying something that you absolutely never said, or doing something that you absolutely never did? Has that ever happened? It hasn't. Yeah. And I'm asking that of everybody here. Has that ever happened? So if you think about a time, take a specific time where somebody did that kind of an accusation. What kind of mindset were they in when they accused you of that? Were they in this connected, loving, wonderful, sweet space? Or were they in some form of hostility or fear? Hostility or fear is a signal the individual who has the hostility or fear has a mind that's using corrupt data to produce its world of pictures, to produce its perception. That's what hostility and fear mean. Now, it's pretty easy for everybody to see, oh, yeah, when he said that about, oh, when they did, yeah, then she did, she said I did. That was all, man, when they're in hostility or fear, their perceptions are really off. The big lesson is to get, when I'm in hostility or fear, my perception's off. The same thing's true about me. Hostility or fear is an indicator my mind is using corrupt data to build my perceptual construct. And someone just made a note that, or in the notes, corrupt data affects other people. And that said, actually, my offering would be that someone else's corrupt data cannot affect you. But if you have matching corrupt data to theirs, their matching garbage will move your matching garbage. But the garbage you're going to be suffering from will be the garbage that's moving in you, not the garbage that's moving in them. Their garbage may trigger yours, but the one that'll cause you pain and suffering will only be your own. Theirs can't cause it in you. Remember our definition of denial. When I think or speak as though something else, oh, it's sad that their corrupt data causes me to feel this way. No, it's I have sadness come up in me when I realize that in the presence of someone else whose corrupt data is moving, mine moves too. And I have forgiveness to do. It takes a whole different, remember that thought that I gave you earlier. In this culture, by the age of 4, virtually everyone is a card-carrying member in the one world universal religion of blame. And they are very religious. They've got somebody to blame for absolutely everything that goes on inside of them. And all of that is based in corrupt data. What we want to do is outgrow that religion and actually become adults, responsible beings. Oh, I have rage moving in me. I think I'll stop blaming everybody else for my rage and go, I'm ready to be done with rage. Oh, sadness, grief, hate, fear. I'm ready to be done with that corrupt data stuff. And I'm ready to get back to reorganizing my physiology. So the only energy it holds is based in my human life, which is love. And, if you ever doubt that human life is love, just hold a newborn child and tap into that newborn. And you know exactly what's true about you and every other human being. That's the only thing that's true about you. Now, have most people had that all covered up with all kinds of garbage? Yeah, sadly. That's why these tools become necessary. So then there's a second component to step 3. And your 3A was, we want to back up one yet, Yinka. Go back to 3B. So if Dad would just, what were the words you used specifically?
In a 3A.
In 3A, yeah.
Is that the goal that I want? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's to basically to having a loving hug with him and then basically looking me in a loving way.
Okay, good, nice. Okay, so notice when you source that energy, you smile.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not here and doesn't know what you're doing. That's the change you can make. You can live in that smile for the rest of your life, even if he became 10 times more hateful than he is today, unless there's something going on inside of you, because that's the only thing that's going to take that smile off your face, is what's the corrupt data inside of you. Yeah, wow.
It's true, because it definitely changed the vibe, thinking of that.
Right.
The goal. When I was thinking my goal, I want to understand, that doesn't really change the vibe. But thinking about that he's hugging me and he's having the lovely thoughts to me and all this, that creates actually love inside me.
Yeah. So what did you change? You only changed one thing, your thinking. That hasn't changed yet. Or actually, that shift in you energetically maybe has already impacted and created a change in Dad. I don't know. Very possibly. I have worked with people. Let me share. Here's probably one of the most extreme examples. Our chef at Heartland was a gentleman who had a lot of trauma and challenges with his sister. And we were doing a still point session one day on our deck and doing a worksheet. And he was at that point, he was in his 40s. And he he stayed in, when he came to our center, he always stayed in my house. So we, did a lot of personal work with him. And this one day he was like in a lot of trauma and he wanted to breathe. So we took him out on the deck and I'm breathing him. And he gets in touch with the fact that his birth was an emergency birth. And when he was born, he was premature and he was put in an incubator. And no one was the only touch. He literally had the memory of being in this incubator and being touched with rubber gloves. That's the only thing that touched him. They could reach into the incubator through these gloves. And he was actually in his own body wastes. He remembered that as an infant and being touched with rubber gloves and just being in tremendous pain with that. So he's breathing away and we're in Theodosia, Missouri. His sister lives in Chicago, which is about, 10 or 12 hours away. He, without thinking about it, had brought his phone out onto our deck where I'm going to do this still point session with him, and he hadn't turned his phone off. And as he's breathing and sharing this memory with me of his birth, his phone rang. I said, Ari, do you want me to? No, just leave it. So we just left it. After the session completed, he went and looked for a message, and it was a message from his sister from Chicago. Now he's close to 50 at this point, and his sister is his older sister. They had a pretty traumatic childhood. However, they had never, in all their years, talked about his birth. The phone message is his sister calling, and she is in upset and angry at him. Because when he was born, he took her mother away because her mother had to stay in the hospital with him. So literally the minute he's having this memory, his sister in Chicago is calling him for the first time in their 50 plus years or thereabouts. She was older than he was, talking about his birth. So I don't know. Dad might be shifting right now. That wouldn't surprise me in the least. I could give you example after example. Remember that we're energy systems, and all energy systems are connected, and all energy systems are in constant communication, although we're taught to shut that down and not be aware of it. So it wouldn't surprise me to see something different. In fact, Yinka might have something to share about that. Yinka, do you have anything to share about doing worksheets and what happens with fathers?
Sorry, I was muted then. Yeah, it certainly opens doors to fathers. I've not seen my father for 29 years, and doing this work, my father ended up on my doorstep a few days ago. Yeah, so it is big stuff that goes on with this stuff. And
it happens all the time.
Yeah, and it's not even just with that other stuff that I've done with Michael. The stuff that comes out, it blows my mind.
It's definitely, again, when you realize we live in an energy system and there's nothing we know of. I used to keynote at a conference called Global Sciences, and one year a gentleman named Marcel Vogel, who was a 23-year senior scientist from IBM, came and presented at the conference. Marcel had the kind of mind that he worked for IBM, and he's the guy who invented the magnetic coating for the plates in your hard drive that allow your hard drive to store information. We wouldn't have hard drives in the computer if it weren't for Marcel. You might remember you've gone to a football game and they sell these light sticks and it's plastic and you bend the plastic and something breaks inside and the chemicals mix and it lights up. That was Marcel's invention. He invented that at the age of 11. Marcel, this particular year, came to the Global Science Conferences and presented a camera that was invented actually in England called a Delaware camera. And the whole point of his presentation was that this camera, which did not just take, it wasn't just an aperture that light came in and registered on the photographic plate, but there was a tuning mechanism on the front of the camera. So you could tune the camera like you'd tune a radio or a TV set. And what he showed us were the pictures of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. Every thought you think sets up an energy wave. And every energy wave communicates about the source of that energy wave. And the only thing that can stop it, the material world is totally transparent to it. The only thing that can stop those high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought is another mind that's in tune with them, in resonance with them. And there's a transfer of energy to that other mind. All minds are in continuous communication. We just live in a shutdown world.
So basically, my corrupted data, which I had about this, it's blocking the energy between my father and I.
Well, it would be an invitation. You know, if my conclusion is, Dad is never going to acknowledge me, you know, maybe Dad heard that I was in town. We haven't talked to each other in years, heard I was in town and came by and came to the door and wanted to apologize for all the years we've been separated and say how sad he was about that. But then he got close enough to me where my energy system says, and Dad never communicates with me. And he knocked on the door and said hello and then just shut down, didn't say another word about what he intended to say. Because he isn't conscious enough about what's moving inside of him. And that's what most people do in unconscious communication. We do a whole workshop called Communication. Did you hear what I think I said? And it addresses these issues of how energetic patterns tend to play out. And most of them are unconscious. That's why the ancients who understood said, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. And that word heart in our modern language would be the unconscious. Take care what's unconscious in you. And if you talk to the average psychologist today, they'll tell you 80, 90, 95, maybe as much as 98% of our thinking is unconscious. And so we're continuously sending these energy patterns out in the world. And when somebody comes to answer the request we've made, we get shocked and want to blame them. That's why we need to shift out of this blame game and start to be, oh, this is what's moving in me. And identifying specifically and precisely the goal that's driving the process is the key to dropping into your own unconscious dynamics and clearing out the corrupt data so that you get to create your life consciously rather than out of the good old family feeling. And most people are fighting against just the accumulated pattern of generation upon generation upon generation. You know, you go back and you look at that story about this group of people called the Jews, and they were wandering in the desert for 40 years. Now, think about this. That desert was about a 35 square mile area. There's a group of pretty bright people. If you read their writing, they know very well the skies and astronomy. Do you think they were really lost in a 35 square mile hot sandy place for 40 years? Do you think that's what it really meant? No. The desert is a code word for the unconscious. They were talking about how most people wander through their lives unconsciously, never knowing that it's what's going on in here that's causing it all. And remember what had to happen in that story. It's a metaphor for life. What had to happen to get out of the desert? And where did you go when you got out of the desert? Well, you went to the promised land. That wasn't a place with palm trees and sunshine, and it was a wonderful place. The promised land is a place of conscious co-creation. The desert is unconscious co-creation. What has to happen to get out of the desert, did they say? They said the old generation has to die off. Now, that doesn't mean everybody in old physical bodies has to physically die. The root of the word generation is genari. It means every cause in me of my pain, I have to remove. It has to die in me. I have to be finished with it. I need to forgive it. When I do that, I'm finished with my pain. And when I'm finished with my pain, I will tend to open the space for everybody else on the planet that has similar pain to also be healed. It's like I use an example of, let's imagine we got a sliding back glass door in the back of the house, and it's all corroded and you can't open it. You know, it doesn't matter. Everybody in the family's tried, nobody can move it. So one day I get out the tools, I get out the chisel, and I get out the solvent, and I clean all the gunk out of the railings and the door, and I grease it, and I put new wheels on it, and now you can do this with the door. Now anybody in the family that wants to get out that back door can just go and open the door because I did the work. if I do the work, if I'm the early adopter, and it can be the toughest place to do it, if I'm the early adopter, I go in and I start to clean up the generational hostility, fear, rage, guilt, grief, drama, trauma, blame, and I open the energy window. I can't force anybody else in the family through that door, but I open that energy window for everybody else to be able to do it more easily. That's the objective of this work. And the core originator of How to Forgive said this: a little leavening leavens the whole loaf. Now, I'd offer he was not talking about bread. He was talking about forgiveness, and he was talking about humanity. That we don't have to get every vicious, vile person to do forgiveness and change their minds and return to love. All we need is enough of us to say, I'm going to do my work to clean up my space. And when I present in the world as active present love, all matter is transparent to whatever I think and whatever moves in me. And when we get enough people doing that, we hit a thing called critical mass. And when we hit a thing called critical mass, everybody changes that fast. That's why I'm here. Because when you clean up your multi-generational database, and I clean up mine, and Yinka cleans up hers, and if we went through the list, if everybody that's on this call right now, let's say Derek said, I'm going to do it, and Lisa and Christine and Gina and Ava and Amara and Jane and Alina, Danny, Corey. Let's imagine everyone, Karen, Susan, Dagmara. What if every person, Georgia, actually picked up and cleaned every bit of hostility and fear out of your structure? How different would our world be? I'd offer individually, it's going to be totally different. And collectively, the world is going to shift. To me, that's why I do this work. That's why when Yinka contacted me and said, Michael, we're going to do your book, I said, okay, I'm there. Because this needs to be understood if humanity is going to survive.
Thank you, Michael.
Hey, honored and delighted. Just doing my job.
It's the reason I contacted you as well, to do my own cleanup work, which is definitely occurring.
That's what we're here to do. Yeah. And again, it's not Dr. Feelgood, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. It takes time. I've been doing this work. I've developed it over the period of the last a little better than 5 decades. And in terms of my own personal internal work, I have done deeper and more important work in the last 2 or 3 years than I did in the first 47 years. So it's a process.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the next step. We're right on track here. Yes. I detect a slight shift in your countenance, Gabriella.
I detected also the slight shift in my heart. I feel it is more open, so it feels so good.
Yeah. Well, when you watch the video, just look at the difference in your face from just 15 minutes ago to now.
Oh my God.
Night and day. So cool. So then what is it that you want to achieve? If he were to do that goal, what would you be able to do with that? So I want him to embrace me, express love toward me, so that I can. What's the so that I can for you?
I can feel loved, and I can feel the love around the family wise. It doesn't matter how it is, but I can release myself from that kind of feelings, which is not good for anybody. So release.
Jot that down. Perfect. And what I'll invite you to notice is all it takes to do that is change your thinking. Dad doesn't have to do anything. Would it be easier if Dad, right now, if your phone rang and Dad said, hey, here I am, sweetie, and I'm just, yeah, it would be easier, but you don't have to have that. And what you're going to find out is that when you cancel your need for that, and that's where we're heading, you're going to contact a whole different part of your own mind. So let's go on to the next step, Yinka.
Yeah. So I choose my love, my essence, which stirs the love in everyone involved.
So basically what we've done is we've identified the construct, the perceptual construct of the mind in step 1. We've stepped into willingness in step 2. In step 3, I've identified specifically the goal that's driving this construct in my mind. Now, in order to clean up what's going to surface underneath it, I want to make sure that love is present. So step 4 is I'm going to key into the most powerful presence of love that I can. So I choose love, my essence. And what happens when you do that, once again, energetically, it tends to stir that energy in everybody around you. And there's nothing, on a physics level, there's nothing in the physical world that can stop that energy. Everything is transparent to that level of energy. It's like an X-ray. That active presence of love is 1,000 times more penetrating than an X-ray is with an 18-inch sheet of lead. It'll pass through anything. So just tapping in now, whatever it is that keys you into the presence of love. Jeannie does a lot of work with people, private work on the phone with people. And she had one client who, when she got to this step, she was like, I don't even know what you're talking about with love. I don't have any experience of that. I don't even. And so Jeannie was quizzing her, and she found out the woman had a cat. Oh, yeah, I can think of the cat. Oh, yeah, okay, my cat. Yeah, I can feel love with my cat. For the first 3 or 4 sessions that she did, when she got to this step, she would have to go around, look at the house, and find the cat, get the cat, put it on her knee, and she'd pet it, and she'd be able to tap into love. After 3 or 4 sessions, she didn't need to do that anymore. But the first few sessions, that's what resonated that energy for her. And when we're talking about love here, we're not talking about the mamby-pamby culture's definition of, sexual athletics, or I'm going to put my head on the chopping block so you can abuse me, then I can show I love you. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the fact that you and I are human beings. Our essence is active present love. And I want to tap into that and bring it into my experience physiologically. So whatever inspires that for you. I have an experience that takes me there so easily. When my children, we birthed them at home. I got to catch them both. And when my daughter was being born, her head, delivered into my hands. And she opened her eyes. Now, of course, the baby's not supposed to be able to focus their eyes for several days. Her eyes laser focused into my eyes, and she grinned at me. And that sent me literally into another state that is one of the most powerful experiences of the presence of love that I've ever had. In fact, I had a classroom in my home at that point, and it was a Friday afternoon when she was born, and I had a workshop that weekend. I could not think a thought. There was just such a powerful, literal presence of love in my physiology. So whatever takes you to that, each time you do this step, you want to enter the practice. And I usually suggest, like for me, every morning, before I get out of bed, I spend time tapping into the presence of love and just being with that energy. If there's anybody that I'm aware of that is in pain, friend, family, enemy, especially enemy, I'll just tap into and direct that energy toward that person or toward myself. Gee, I stubbed my big toe. So I'm going to just tap into, cultivate my relationship with that presence of love, recognizing that in my physiology, and send it to that hurt part of my body. That's a practice I recommend everybody do every day. And then you'll get to the point where you recognize that it won't be something you'll have to effort or go get, because you'll recognize it's who you are. And that presence in you is what will dissolve the underlying pain that perhaps has been going on in your bloodline for 1,000 or more generations.
Michael,
Yes.
may I ask? So when you are actually tapping into the presence of the love, and then you are transferring the energy, let's say, as you just described it, is stepping on the toe. What do you mean? What that mean? What do you do basically? What is in your mind? Like, how do you wrap it into the love, or?
So let's say the other day I was working in the garden, and I had this device for mixing the compost, and I was twisting it and pulling on it, and I kind of pulled a muscle on my shoulder. So the next morning, actually that night, as I'm going to sleep and I've got that pain in my shoulder, I'm tapping into that presence of love, and I'm literally directing that to my shoulder. In the morning, I woke up aware of that pain in my shoulder. I'm breathing, tapping into that presence of love and directing it into that tissue. And about 98% of the time, whatever irritation or pain there is that's going on disappears about that fast. So you're gently breathing and tapping into the presence of your human life. Samsung, you have a question?
She said, I don't know how to tap into love. I don't have much at the moment.
Okay. So what I would suggest, if you don't, then here, I'll lend you my story. It's 3:40 in the afternoon. It's a Friday afternoon, and you've got a classroom and people are coming to do a workshop. And at 3:40, you realize that your wife is in labor. And at 4:40, literally an hour later, you're catching Krista Joy's head. Actually, my daughter, we didn't have a name for her until she was being born. And it was just really clear for both my wife and I that her name was Krista Joy. So I want you to just join me, be there, and imagine you're catching this pure presence of being that's just so amazing that it transforms you. So you're welcome to borrow my circumstance and use it as your way to tap in. And ultimately, you are that presence. What we're looking to do is uncover the fact that you are that presence that I'm talking about. Each of us is. You might remember this teacher 2,000 years ago said, in order for you to live, you've got to die. And you go, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means that there's a false self in my mind, somebody that I think I am. All those power person messages, oh, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that, you'll never be this, you'll never do that. Those are all those messages you were given, and there's a self based in those lies. Ultimately, this work is about discarding that self. In order for you, true being, love, to live in your physiology, that old self's got to go. And that's the essence of the work, is letting that old self go. Corey?
If you raise your
Everybody
hand,
breathing?
you raise your hand and then you come on the top of my screen.
Yeah, let's go on to number 5.
There's the rose and the butterfly story.
Oh, yes.
So you imagine.
Go for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you want to read it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Imagine we have a rose and a butterfly, and we give them each an ego. They meet and fall in love and have a wonderful time together. Then one day the butterfly flies away because the rose thinks there was nothing more important than the love of the butterfly, uproots itself to give chase. What is going to happen to the rose? It dies. Why does it die? because it made something else more important than staying connected to its source. Anytime we make something else more important than staying connected to our source, our being love, then we have disconnected and our own death. Initiated our own death.
Yeah. So we're designed as humans to stay connected to love, to the truth of who we are. We came into a world as the presence of love, and we came into a world whose specialty is to slap and knock that out of us, and then they send us out to find somebody to love us, or to find somebody to love. And now the mind is on a whole false journey, and it will never find that. You can't get love from somebody else. You can't do love to somebody else. You can only be love in someone else's presence. And so the false self has to go. And Corey, you've got a question for us?
Unmute. There you go, Corey.
Go for it, Corey.
You're unmuted. No, you've muted yourself now. Let me unmute. There you go.
Okay. But yet the question was what you said before about emotions and love. And so when I am in anger, I notice that directly. Can I go? But so then I directly do not want to have that anger. I want to feel different and better.
So what would you do about that, Corey?
To send love to that. I think
well,
that is possible in that moment.
Corey, you have this tool we've given you, and we've done this worksheet process with you. Wouldn't the first thing you do put the pen to the paper around whatever that situation is and forgive what's going on inside of you? Wouldn't that be I mean, you've got a tool just designed for exactly what you just asked, right? So that's what I'd suggest you do, is use the tool.
Yeah.
That's how you dismantle it.
Yeah, I understand. But when it comes in a situation where I cannot work on that later?
There is no situation you can't work on it. I can't imagine one. In what situation could I possibly be in where I recognize I have a goal that's causing my mind to serve up all kinds of trauma and drama and pain and rage and fear, or whatever it is? What situation could I be in that I can't say to myself, I cancel the goal for this to happen, and I'm going to process myself through this? Why would I not do that?
When I am too much in my work, which I have to do things, I am asked to be very to be very clear about what I do and not making mistakes.
So I would suggest that the one thing that guarantees you're going to make mistakes is that you let the hostility or fear run you in that situation. And I'd suggest you start a new habit. I'd suggest when you're at work, you make sure you've got a stack of worksheets right there on your desk or right there in your drawer. And if something comes up, the minute it does, you start that worksheet and you start to process through that until you get done with those energetic patterns. Yeah. I mean, this is exactly what the tool is designed for. Put it to work. In the middle of your muddle, in the middle of a discussion with your boss, you know, up comes this rage. What do I do?
That's good.
What do I want from the boss?
That's good.
If somebody could mute themselves, I don't know who it is. So I'm in the middle of this discussion with my boss. What am I going to do? I'm going to cancel this goal. I'm going to breathe and I'm going to process what's coming up in me so that I can be here and be sane.
Oh,
that's what this tool is designed for.
I understand.
Good. All right.
Yeah, that was a good example for me. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right.
So
okay.
When I'm upset, my perception, my mind constructs is built out of corrupt data driven by my goal. in number 3. By cancelling that goal, the driver that selects the data that produces my reality, my errant perception collapses and I get to drop into the part of my mind hidden from me by pretense that others are responsible for what I have created again.
So whenever I'm in upset, there's a construct my mind's got called perception, and it's built out of corrupt data. Here's how I collapse that picture. The thing that's driving it is my goal. So I'm going to take my answer from number 3 and bring it down here in number 5A, and I'm going to cancel that goal. Now, people say, wait a minute, Michael, that's a perfectly good goal. Why would I cancel that goal? That's a great goal. You know something? I agree with you. It's a great goal. But if you notice that every time you put it in your mind goes crazy, you cancel the goal so you get to clean up your own mind. It doesn't mean you can't have it or you don't want it. It just means that as long as you lock it into your mind, you're in trouble. And you want to give that up. You want to change that game. And I'm going to take 1 second while you're writing that. My granddaughter just stuck her head in the door to say goodbye. She's heading home from being here for the afternoon. I'm just going to say goodbye to her and give her a hug. Thank you for saying bye, sweetie. Where are you? Come here, quick. Thank you for coming to the door and saying goodbye. She said she She did. She did it. Thank you. See you in a bit. Bye, sweetie.
You just made it.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, but do you want to see the birdhouse real fast?
Oh, yes.
I'm at the bottom.
Oh, wow. Oh, very cool. Very cool. All right, sweetheart. Cheers, you. Bye-bye. All right. We're back.
Yeah.
My granddaughter's 5, and she just turned 5 a few weeks ago. And since she's been born, we've been raising her 2 to 3 days a week. So she comes here after school, and we get to spend some time with her. So
That's beautiful.
it is. I am blessed. She's just been such a gift in our lives. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And so she, in a quiet little voice, snuck at the door and said, "Bye, Peppa."
Bye. So sweet.
I had to get a hug before she left, though. So again, the reason why I cancel the goal is not because I can't have it or I don't want it. It's that I recognize when I put it in my mind, it resonates corrupt that in me, and I want to clean up my mind. How can I clean up my mind if that stuff stays hidden in my unconscious? I can't. So what happens when we talked about that Harvard research? So 10,000 brain cells are firing off. The max amount of data that comes to conscious awareness is 9 bits. So it's like I've got a 9-bit blank space, and it's filled with garbage. When I cancel the goal, the garbage perception collapses. When it collapses in on its own root. And now the hidden unconscious data that's producing this pain perception gets a space to come forward in the presence of love. And when the two meet, guess what happens to corrupt data? It's transmuted. The energy's changed. So that's why I cancel a perfectly good goal, because I want to clean up what's inside of me that's behind this pain perception. Does that make sense for everybody? I mean, it took me to be able to say that sentence I just said. It took me 35 years of working full-time directly with the first century Aramaic language and forgiveness. That's how brainwashed my mind was in canceling a goal. What the heck can that do for you? It took me 35 years to understand. And when I first started to work with it, when I was first introduced to this idea from the Aramaic of forgiveness, it didn't particularly impress me, and I didn't teach it as such, but in my workshops, every once in a while, I'd mention it. that this is what forgiveness looks like in Aramaic. And over time, I had people came back to me and say, wow, I've been doing that canceling goal thing. That's really powerful. I was like, really? Okay. And when I started to look into it, it just became more and more of a, I don't know, it just grabbed me and dragged me in. And that became the whole focal point of my life's work, was forgiveness. And it literally took me 35 years to be able to explain this simple piece of information. Like, just go out into the world and see where you can find anybody who could explain how it's done. Perception, a construct of the mind based in corrupt data, fills this space. And unless I find a way to empty this space and get to what's underneath it and clean it up, I'm never going to get it cleaned up. This genius 2,000 years ago said, here's how you do it. You cancel the goal. In the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag or shabak, and it literally means to cancel. You cancel the goal that's driving your perception collapses. You get to access what's underneath it and clean it up. Duh. It's so simple. But in the brainwashed mind of the culture of blame, I mean, I lived there just like everybody else. It took some time to get through that. Hopefully, I'm going to short circuit the process for you, and you can take it and use it. And as you do, it'll change everything in your life.
Also, by canceling the goal, you freeing yourself.
That's the idea. Yes. Yeah. That's it. You're able to breathe off the burden in yourself. You're able to access what has maybe been hidden in your bloodline for 1,000 generations, opening the unconscious and cleaning it up. So 5A, now, when I recognize that this may be a generational pattern, let's go back to the Aramaic again. And one of the things they said was, the sins of the fathers will be passed, yea, unto 3 and 4 generations. And you go, what the heck? First of all, let's understand the word sin. This whole Greek idea of sin is just pure bunk that's meant to keep people in fear. Sin in Aramaic is an archery term. If you're in the archery range and you picked up your bow and arrow and you fired and you missed the bullseye, the scorekeeper would yell, sin, you're off the mark. That's all the word means, is you missed the mark. If you put an energy into your structure that's off the mark, your structure is going to suffer and become diseased. So when they said the sins of the fathers would pass to 3 and 4 generations, here's what they were telling us, is that when somebody engages in an energetic pattern that doesn't belong, that pattern is stored holographically. They didn't have the language to explain this 2,000 years ago, was stored holographically in every cell in the structure, including the sperm and the egg. And were you to have a child tomorrow, that child would have in its structure every thought you've ever thought, every feeling you've ever felt, every unresolved issue you've ever had in your life is going to be stored in your child's structure. Now, if you don't believe that, then I invite you to just investigate and see if my definition of having a child works for you in your life, if you've noticed this. Having a child is like having your unconscious mind hang out in true living color and Dolby sound. Everything you've never dealt with, they're going to bring up for you.
I totally resonate with that.
Why? Why? Because they don't have a stop button. Every attempt to punish a child is an attempt to get them to shut down what I don't want to look at in me as a parent. That's one of the things my granddaughter's taught me. That she's taught me, and I knew this to a degree with my children when they were small, but they're now in their 40s. So I knew it to a degree, but what I've come to understand with my granddaughter is recognizing who she is as the presence of love. That my job as her grandfather is to make sure the only thing I see of her is that presence of love. And that I create that space of love for her to support her coming into her body, into her physiology, into her family system, and making a space for her that's based in love and the creation of her life. That's my job. And if her body does something, her mind, her mouth does something that brings up some form of hostility or fear in me, my job as her grandfather is to clean that up as fast as I can, so I get back to being the space of love for her, acknowledging her as who she is, and helping her to build a viable, conscious, spiritual body that expresses the truth of who she is in her world. That's what we're here for as parents, as grandparents. And that's what she's taught me. And it takes some work.
Certainly does.
But, you know, once you realize it's there to be done, what else is there to do? And of course, this new screen that Yinka just put up, that's one of my favorite sayings, is if they're the one with the problem, why am I the one with the pain? Obviously, if they're the one with the problem, they'd be the one with the pain. If I have pain and I think it's their problem, maybe I have a problem and I don't know it. This is how I uncover what my problems are. And I get out of the one world religion of blame and I step into being an adult that's responsible. So here's an action step. Here's what you want to do with this. You've laid this whole thing out. Now I'm going to tap into, I'm going to hold to that space with holding love, conscious, active, and present. And in Aramaic, the word that was used for that, there's no such concept in the English language, is Rachma. I now choose to collapse my mind's lies by willingly canceling my goal for, in this case, Dad, to, and what were your exact words, Gabriella?
That will be the 3B, yeah?
Yes. So you've got Dad as in 3A, and then what the goal is that you identified in 3B.
Basically, really, so feel love and no, goal is to have a loving hug and loving look towards to me and receiving the love from my dad.
Right. So I cancel my need for that. Just flat out cancel it and breathe. And as you do that, we want to move to 5B, and that is if I'm dealing with an issue that's one of these generational patterns, and I have this 9-bit mind, how do I ever clean up, 1,000 generations of that crazy stuff? Again, when they said the sins of the father, they were saying the energetic patterns, the energies that are off the mark, just get passed from generation to generation. If I've got this, we'll say metaphorically, a 9-bit mind, how am I ever going to clean all that up? There's no way you can. But there is a power in you, we could say a super processor, that will do that for you if you invite it into activity. In Aramaic, it was called Ruka de Kudsha. This is the factual stuff out of those teachings. It's not the religiosity stuff that the world plays with. So Ruka de Kudsha in Aramaic is a feminine elemental force in us that by definition, one, undoes, when invited, undoes the effects of our errors, and two, teaches us the truth. If I can collapse my mind's lies long enough and I can sit in silence, there is a power in me. Each one of us has this power in us that will process the garbage out and teach us the truth. So I'm going to invite that, and I leave that blank. I usually just put a short form of Ruka in there. Some call it the higher power, the superconscious, the subconscious, the primordial X. The Greeks called it the Holy Spirit. There's nothing about a disembodied spirit being. It's an actual feminine elemental force in us. So there's several things I'm going to ask that power to do for me: to restore me to my newborn essence of love, to heal my denial, and my capacity to generate the emotion that I identified in number 1B. It was anger we were working on. So you're going to ask to have that, like, free you of that anger. And then help me to open a direct conscious relationship with and gently remove the denied, dissociated, and projected parts of my own mind. And breathe. So the two steps go hand in hand. I cancel my goal, and then I invite this higher power, whatever you choose to call it. Some people will call it God. Some people might call it Buddha. Somebody might call it Jesus. The religions have tried to take this of their own, to make it their own, but it's not religious. It's just, there's a super processor in you. If you want to put it to work, it'll work. That's all. So you're asking that power to go to work in you. And then when your mind gets quiet, if you listen, it's amazing what you'll be taught. You know, ultimately, this work is to connect you to your teacher. And your teacher is not me. Your teacher is inside of you. That's where each of us is designed to go, to connect with that presence of love. And breathe. And just be with that breath for a moment. And we'll just be with you in silence and breathe with you. And then, because the mind tends to be a habit machine, I'm going to want to move out of getting stuck in the pattern. So one of the things the mind tends to be addicted to is the need to be right. So there's another, you've canceled the goal. We're going to do another canceling now. I cancel my need to be right. And I cancel my need to make up another story out of my hidden corrupt data to hallucinate proof that my fear or hostility-based story, my reality is true. So what I've noticed, the reason I put this step in the worksheet, is that many people just go back to their old pattern. Yeah, they'll work through something, but then they'll go back to, it's kind of like blowing up a balloon. The next time you blow it up, it's easier to blow up. It's easier for your mind to go back to that old pattern. So I want to, each time I do a worksheet, I want to consciously let go of the need to use that pattern. And that's what 5C is designed for. And then in 6A, how do you feel? What's happening physically, mentally, emotionally? And just document that for yourself. Your face looks just slightly different, Gabriella, than when we started.
Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate that.
You're
And
wearing that smile all over your face.
I feel definitely lighter.
Yeah, good, good. That's the idea. I feel definitely lighter. There it is. And then if you look back at number 1, if you just kind of look at that general picture, what does it look like to you now? Over the years, it's always really gratifying to watch how people's energy shift. But the most common feedback that I get when they look back at number 1, they're like, I don't even know why I was so upset about that. Like, what was the big deal? You know what the big deal was? You had a thought disorder that held that as true. And you put that thought disorder on somebody outside of you. So now you're stuck with it. I mean, when you get down to the root of it, it's really pretty silly, but everybody's doing it. So why not, eh? And be aware, and this video link will be available on our YouTube channel, be available on Yinka's site, that anytime you get stuck, because, when you're looking at this massive database, 1,000 generations, if you just do the math and go back 30 generations, every thought, every feeling, every reality, every unresolved issue of every life in your bloodline is in your structure. Like, it's a massive multi-generational database. If you go back just 30 generations, if you do the math, that's 1.6 billion people in your genes. So the major attribute of this, what we'll call the non-being mind, is inertia. If you remember from physics class in high school, the definition of inertia, a body moving in a particular direction, a particular rate of speed, will tend to continue to move in that direction at that rate of speed until it's acted upon by an outside force. Inertia. So there can be a tendency for the heaviness to come back up, and the pain and the trauma and the generational patterns. And that's why you make this tool your habit. You make it a new habit. You use it every day. And then the final step in the worksheet, a principle of the universe is that by giving, I first get the original. Gratitude, you do some research on what they've done with gratitude, and they've shown it's a very powerful healing energy. So at this point, just tapping into the gratitude for the opportunity to look at this and change it can be powerful. And then I choose truth. Like, rather than my mind's lies, most people live in a world of blockage of truth. They tell themselves a lie. Somebody else is responsible for my pain. They fill their 9-bit mind with this lie, and they call their lie the truth. And now they're living in blockage of truth. The truth isn't available to them anymore. Forgiveness collapses that whole game and gives you a chance to go back and go for truth and perfect love. And then the final step is, based on the issue I'm working with here, toward whoever I'm doing this worksheet on, in this case it was Dad, from a space of connected love, what would a goal be that you'd be willing to offer to Dad?
To be happy.
Okay, awesome. Cool. And you might look at it, and the idea is, when it says based on this worksheet, remember that one of your punishment thought was to make him invisible too. So it might be to really see him, and every time you think of him, to extend love in his direction, because it sounds like he might have a shortage. And I forget who it was that said it, but if we were able to see the secret pain, we would see enough pain and suffering in everyone's lives that all we would do would be embrace them. And you know what it'll cost you? Absolutely nothing. You know what it'll give you? Absolutely everything. Hey, what? You find a better deal than that, I'm buying it.
I loved it. I really, really loved it. And I think I'm really, really thankful for doing it with you, Michael. So I'm so much appreciating for your time, and also for having this opportunity to do it, because I did understand this worksheet way better than I did understand it before.
Cool. Awesome. So last thought at the bottom of the page there, in red: breathe, be loved, cleanse, and breathe in oxygen. And appreciate the fact that you get to have a human life. Like, how does it get better than that? In all the universe, we get to actually have a human life, things like hands that we can do things with in it. Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing. So, Miss Yinka, how are you, young lady?
Yeah, I think is that the, yeah, that's the last slide then. That was really helpful for me as well, with having my dad come back in my life. It's actually been, I realised it's actually been 39 years, not 29 years. I forgot how old I was.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Inka, thank you very much for sharing actually your story too. Thanks.
I do highly recommend these teachings as well, because for me it has been a big game changer. And it's the sense, because I'm very much feeling it. I can feel my energy, and I can feel the energy shift.
Yeah, that's where I actually could feel it also around my heart. And I was like, okay, this is something new, and it kind of feels good. So I understand. I'm sorry.
That's your original human life coming into your physiology. That's called incarnation.
And I really believe that as a human being, we really need this to do.
I'm with you. My commitment is to make it available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. So pass it on.
Well,
And if you're in a position to support it, support it. We've got the world's only forgiveness app. You can go to your app store on your phone, type in the words Heartland, Heartland, Aramaic forgiveness. And you can do the worksheet process right there on your phone. From the app in your phone, if you have a question, any page on the app, click a button, type your question, hit send. Jeannie will get it. We'll read it on the radio show. We'll answer your question. We'll send you back a link to the radio show with your answer. The radio show, there are just about 4,500 hours in the archives. Basically, we've had we could take this and make it one of our archive radio shows. This is just like doing a radio show. There are 4,500 hours of this available free on our website. Just go to whyagain.org. It's a 20,000 page website. As I say, right there you can access. You see a picture of a microphone. Click on that. You can drill down by day. There are notes in many of the radio shows of what it covers, so you can look at it topically. If you happen to listen to a radio show that doesn't have notes, if you would, it would be appreciated if in your listening you create a set of notes and send them to us, just with kind of what it covers, so that we can put it in. That makes it searchable for people. Yeah, and you can download the book free from our website. The book's out of print, so I can't sell you one. Although you can usually go to eBay or Amazon, and they're usually used copies available. The book was published over a quarter of a century ago, and we sold enough copies that it's still hanging around and available on at least 2 or 3 different websites. So, and the PDF's free. So,
and if anyone wants to take this a little bit deeper, I just want to say, to even if you have one session of doing a mind shifter, it's been doing the last one that I did, well, the last 2 I've done of these mind shifters that Michael has given me has thrown me. It's like the energy that I can feel shifting, moving, and sometimes not so comfortable, but it is definitely shifting something up and out. And the last one I couldn't even write it out. It was so, I wanted to scream at the world. I didn't want to write it. Michael's like, write it out so many times. It's like, but the stuff that is brought up out in me is amazing. It's like, yeah.
wow.
And it made me feel like I wanted to vomit. It was that bad, that feeling that it was, that night I even dreamed about constantly vomiting. Throughout all my dreams that I had, I was just constantly vomiting. Every time I speak to somebody, I'd just project vomit. And that's the sense of what it was like, the feeling that I had when I wrote this mind shifter, that I just wanted to vomit it out of me.
Yeah. And it's a tool. Mind shifter is a tool for resonating and activating those things, so you get to look at what you need to work through. So it's another tool that we teach. We do have, if you're ready to take your work to a whole other level, there are 2 things you can do. Well, I mean, lots of things. There's a 20,000 page website, the app, and it's Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. I did put it in the notes. But we have a monthly Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing Club. Meets once a month on the 3rd Saturday and Sunday of the month at 11 o'clock Eastern time in the US. And that's a monthly process. If anybody wants to join that, you can do 1 session, or you can do a package of 3, or you can do a whole year. And so if you're interested in that, you could send Jeannie an email asking her about it. And her email address, that's my wife, is JEANIE, Jeannie, at whyagain.org. So you can join the Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing Club. Or if you're ready to really crank it up a notch, there's a self-study intensive. We actually did 2 back-to-back codependence to interdependence communication intensives. And that's a 90-hour video package. It includes a personal code evaluation, which is based on what's called the MMPI, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. It's kind of considered to be the gold standard of psychological testing. And we designed it so it's a shortened thing. It only takes about 30 minutes to do, and it gives you specific tools to address what the blockages are in your own mind. And then there are 90 hours of video to work through a whole other set of tools. So there, we've done about 2 hours today. So this is a 90-hour package where we cover why is this happening to me again, healing through relationships, communication. Did you hear what I think I said? Mind shifters and still point breathing, and codependence to interdependence. So if you're ready to move that to your work to the next level, then you can go to whyagain.org or drop Jeannie a note and say you want to do that. The cost of the 90-hour video intensive with 2 personal code evaluations is $600 US. That's for the whole package. And our radio show is there for support. You can ask questions on the radio show. And the Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing Club, a single session is $150 US. 3 sessions is $125 each, or you can do the whole year and it's $900 for 12 sessions. So if you're ready to invest in another level in your work, there are 2 options. And again, if this is supporting you, the way that, we're actually now landed, we don't travel anymore, but up until about 5 years ago, Jeannie and I were on the road and we went anywhere on the planet that we were invited. We actually made one stop in England back about 15 years ago. We did a series of workshops there, but we went anywhere on the planet we were invited. We did our workshops free and we paid our own expenses actually to do it. And so not traveling anymore is kind of put a hole in our cash flow. So if this supports you and you want to support it, then go to our website. There's a donate button and do whatever's appropriate if that's something you want to do. Other than that, create the best year out of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world, and pass the tools along to somebody else. Thank you. Blessings. Appreciate you, Inka.
Thank you.
Thanks for your courage, Gabriella.
Yes.
Thank you. No, thank
Good
you.
work.
Appreciate it.
Nice work. Awesome.
I'm just going to play some music to play us out with. Don't need to
All right.
sit and listen. Just
Blessings,
grateful for what
everybody.
you've just learned.
Woke up.